Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, Understanding the Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this series, we're looking at Surah Al-Kahf. And we have arrived at the 50th verse of the Qur'an, of this chapter. This is almost halfway through the chapter. We've finished looking at the judgment. Allah speaks about the judgment and reminding us that He is most just. We will not escape from anything we have done in this life, and we'll be rewarded for every good thing we've done. Then Allah goes on to address the issues of our enemy, the one who has created in our lives and will continue to create in our lives a number of trials, will encourage us to disobedience, etc. Allah in the 50th chapter reminds us about the original sin. He said,
وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ بِئْسَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بَدَلًا.
remember when I told the angels, prostrate to Adam. So they all prostrated except Iblis. He was one of the jinns, and he disobeyed the command of his Lord. Allah reminds us of the time after the creation of Adam, that He instructed the angels that were present to prostrate before Adam. And Iblis, who was from the world of the jinn, was among the angels at that time. Allah had elevated him due to the knowledge which He had given him, the power, etc. He had given him. He had elevated him up to a rank where he was angels. So when Allah created Adam, He instructed the angels to bow before him, and Iblis was amongst them. Naturally, this command also addressed Iblis. And their angels all bowed, because angels do not disobey Allah. As Allah said in the Qur'an, وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They do whatever they're commanded to do. But in the case of the jinn, Allah has given them, like human beings, a free will, an ability to obey or disobey. So Iblis, who was among them, he refused to bow. And in other chapters, he goes into explaining why. He felt he was better than Adam. Arrogance, pride. This is the essence of racism, tribalism, where people feel they're better than others because they belong to a particular tribe or a particular race. When in fact there are no races. There's only a human race. And in fact, all the tribes are just families from one set of parents, Adam and Eve. We're all brothers and sisters. So pride, this evil, about which Prophet Musa said, whoever has in his heart an atom's weight or a mustard seed's weight of pride will not enter paradise. It will destroy our good deeds. It will prevent us from going into paradise. And the companions asked him, does this mean that when a person gets a new cloak or he buys a new pair of shoes and he feels proud about it, that this means they're not going to go to paradise? He said, no. This is not the pride about which I speak. It's the pride which leads people to deny the truth and to promote falsehood. This is the pride, the evil. This is the essence of racism. People feeling they're better than others when they know inside themselves they're not. It's a lie. Promoting themselves as being superior to others when they know inside themselves it's not the case. So that evil desire this distorted evil desire, led Iblis to disobey Allah. And in his arrogance, when he was chastised by God for what he did, feeling that he was better, it was unfair for God to make him bow to something which was inferior to himself. Then his arrogance led him to challenge God, that he could send all of God's creatures astray. Give him time. It was the challenge. And God gave him time until the day of resurrection to prove what he could do. But Allah clarified that he cannot affect the true worshippers. The righteous worshippers cannot be affected ultimately by Satan. Cannot be taken off the path. Not to say that they may not make mistakes, but they cannot ultimately be taken off the path and into disbelief. Now Allah uses the term Iblis. We find elsewhere the term Satan is used. You know, the devil. When it's used, it means Iblis. Prior to his disobedience, Allah refers to him as the Iblis, and after that you find Allah refers to him as Satan and his descendants. All of those who have taken the same path of disobedience, Allah refers to them as shayateen, devils. And he speaks of the devils from humankind and among the jinn. So a devil is not necessarily a jinn. It may be a human being. We have human devils. And this is real. We have people who call to disbelief and call people to worship others besides Allah. These are all devils. People like Sai Baba in India, who has over 10 million followers there. And they say even some 50 million followers around the world. People believing that he is God. He performs a few, what appears to people to be miracles, and he's worshipped as God. Even the Prime Minister of the country has accepted him as a living God walking amongst us. Of course, he's now currently being charged, for molestation, molesting a number of young men. Throughout his life here, he's been involved in pedophilia and molestation, sodomy, etc. Of course, this has all been hidden by his followers, or they find other explanations for it. You can't understand the workings of God. As we can't understand it in this life, why these things happen, we can't understand that either. Try to cover it up. But the man is a devil, an evil individual. And we even find Muslims, I've run into Muslims in Sri Lanka, Muslims all the way in Trinidad, who worship this man, have accepted this man as God incarnate on the earth. He tries to put religions all together into one, and the religion he comes up with, the religion of love, love all, serve all, this is his catchphrase, but the man is evil. Anyway, the point is Allah reminds us of this time. The time when Iblis refused to obey Allah's command, and in his arrogance set himself as an enemy. And Allah goes on to say in that same verse, will you then take him and his offspring as allies rather than me? Though they are your enemies, what an evil exchange for those who do wrong. So if we know that Iblis was the enemy, should we take him and his offspring as allies instead of Allah? People choosing falsehood over truth, choosing those who are evil over those who are righteous. They are our enemies. As Satan caused Adam and Eve to disobey Allah in the garden, he causes us in this life to disobey Allah in a variety of different acts throughout our lives, in a variety of different ways, making evil seem good to us creating doubts in our minds, redirecting our efforts into the wrong channels where we focus on things that we shouldn't be focusing on. In a variety of different ways, depending on our state, Satan comes and tries to confuse us and get us to disobey Allah, to disbelieve in Him, to commit sin, and to take him and his friends as our allies and our friends. And this is what Satan had said to Adam, isn't it? When he came to him in the garden, he said, I am a true friend to you. I'm a good friend. The only reason why Allah didn't want you to eat from this tree was because it would make you live forever, make you like an angel. This is a temptation, playing on the desires, the human desires to want to be eternal, to live forever. Adam, in spite of his state, not really even understanding death and all these other kind of things, this concept of living forever was there. It attracted him, it caught him. And Eve went and ate from the tree and disobeyed Allah. So, what was Iblis to them? He was, in fact, their enemy. Though he seemed to be offering them something very beautiful from the fruit of the tree, promising them something, they are false promises. And elsewhere you find Allah describing the promises of Satan. And they're false promises. That Satan calls people to poverty. He puts fear in them, of Allah and of obedience with poverty, that if you do this thing, if you're charitable, if you give in your wealth, you're going to become poor. You better save your stuff. So he puts fear in our hearts about poverty, and thereby stopping us from doing good. But in fact, what he's calling us to is poverty, because we will be poor of good deeds, which is the greater poverty. We think that the greater poverty is the poverty of wealth and possessions, but the greater poverty is that of good deeds. To be poor in this category or in this aspect is the worst state to be in this life. As Satan caused Adam and Eve to disobey Allah in the garden, he causes us in this life to disobey Allah in a variety of different acts throughout our lives, in a variety of different ways, making evil seem good to us, creating doubts in our minds, redirecting our efforts into the wrong channels where we focus on things that we shouldn't be focusing on. In a variety of different ways, depending on our state, Satan comes and tries to confuse us and get us to disobey Allah, to disbelieve in Him, to commit sin, and to take him and his friends as our allies and our friends. And this is what Satan had said to Adam, isn't it? When he came to him in the garden, he said, I am a true friend to you. I'm a good friend. The only reason why Allah didn't want you to eat from this tree was because it would make you live forever, make you like an angel. This is a temptation, playing on the desires, the human desires to want to be eternal, to live forever. Adam, in spite of his state, not really even understanding death and all these other kind of things, this concept of living forever was there. It attracted him, it caught him. And Eve went and ate from the tree and disobeyed Allah. So, what was Iblis to them? He was, in fact, their enemy. Though he seemed to be offering them something very beautiful from the fruit of the tree, promising them something, they are false promises. And elsewhere you find Allah describing the promises of Satan. And they're false promises. That Satan calls people to poverty. He puts fear in them, of Allah and of obedience with poverty, that if you do this thing, if you're charitable, if you give in your wealth, you're going to become poor. You better save your stuff. So he puts fear in our hearts about poverty, and thereby stopping us from doing good. But in fact, what he's calling us to is poverty, because we will be poor of good deeds, which is the greater poverty. We think that the greater poverty is the poverty of wealth and possessions, but the greater poverty is that of good deeds. To be poor in this category, or in this aspect, is the worst state to be in this life. So Allah warns us. Are we going to take Satan as our ally when in fact he is our enemy? And he said that for those who do wrong, they have made this evil exchange. It's an evil exchange. To trade God for Satan, righteousness for evil. This is the worst trades that we could possibly do. And then Allah goes on in verse 51 to speak about the realities of human knowledge and the struggles of this life. He says there,
ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا.
I did not make them witness the creation of the heavens and the earth, nor even their own creation, nor would I take those who lead people astray as helpers. We didn't witness the creation of the heavens and the earth, so we don't really know the realities of this life. So we need to take knowledge of that realities from God and the messengers of God that have been sent to us. They have the true knowledge about the realities of this life. And those who would claim to have knowledge of those realities, you have the atheists, the communists, a variety of other people who are trying to explain this life to us, but they're devoid of any guidance from revelation. Such people, Allah will not take them as His friends. Those who would send the masses of people on earth astray. Though they may seem very powerful due to their technology, etc., they're able to, create all kinds of things, right down to test tube babies and clones and all these other kinds of things. And they seem to have the answer. And they explained life, how life got here, evolution. But in reality, these are just stories. They're just stories. If we look at them very closely, we get into the depth of it, we realize really they don't have knowledge. If they're to explain for us how life came about, where did life come from, how inanimate substances could become living substances, they cannot. Can they make, as Allah said, if all of the people of the earth got together, the jinns and the human beings, they couldn't even make a fly. Even a fly, something we consider to be so nasty. We kill them in droves, step on them, swat them, everything. This nasty little thing. We as human beings cannot create a fly. We couldn't create a fly. If we could create an aeroplane that could function with the skill of a fly, this is something, the helicopter is something which gets somewhere in that neighborhood, but it's nothing like a fly. How a fly can move, it far outstrips anything that we have created of flying machines, etc. Nothing like the fly. And the fly, of course, there are many other creatures Allah has created which are even more, skillful, etc. But just a simple thing like the fly. The eye of the fly. The fly, when we get into it, how it is made up, its antenna, its legs, its, the whole thing. A living creature, we cannot do it. This is the reality. So those who are powerful in this life, who think they have the answer, who claim to have the answers, and are claiming they can explain away life without having to resort to God at all, evolution is the answer. No, these people are people who have been deluded by Satan. They have become agents, helpers for Satan. And Allah would never take them as his allies, as his friends, because they lead people into darkness. Whereas revelation, goodness, the prophets, etc., this leads people into light, into clarity, away from confusion. So Allah reminds us that we did not witness the creation of the heavens and the earth. No matter what stories we make up, the Big Bang Theory, how atoms, everything were crushed into a single spot and it exploded. And how the solar system was formed in this way, from this explosion, this kind of thing. Allah said, you didn't witness it. As long as we didn't witness it, we will never know how it was, how it actually was. The Big Bang, the explosion. But realities tell us that no matter how many bombs we drop into a junkyard, those bombs, the explosion in the junkyard, will never produce a Rolls Royce with the key in the ignition that we can just open the door, step in, and drive away. That's what this world is like in relationship, obviously far more complex, in relationship to its origins. So think about it. No matter how many bombs we drop in a junkyard, you could never even produce a toaster just to put your bread in and toast it. So it's ready. That explosion just brought all the metals to pieces together, so it's ready. We have a toaster here, put our bread in, press it down, pop up toasted bread. It will never happen. Can never happen. Similarly, the Big Bang did not produce this. Allah, God, the Creator, produced this. But let us close with this truth, this point of reflection which Allah has given us to think about and to cause us to turn back to revelation, where the truth lies. God is truth. With that, dear viewers, I bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I hope to see you in our future programs.